Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll give everyone just a couple minutes to join us and get settled. Hopefully, if you're on the East Coast, you're having some lunch, and if you're on the West Coast, you can have a late breakfast. Okay, maybe 2 minutes to get going. One more minute. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Excuse me. What a way to start. I'm Molly Sullivan. I'm the head of brand here at Quickbase, and I'm joined today by Kevin Schuler, the CEO of Quandary Consulting Group. Kevin, welcome. Great to have you.
Hey, Molly. Yeah, thanks for having us, and looking forward to learning and sharing more about gray work.
Yeah, awesome. Kevin, now Quandary is one of our strongest partners, but for those who maybe don't know it, would you give us a quick overview?
Absolutely. So 50,000-foot view is that Quandary is an elite partner of Quickbase, and we focus on continuous improvement through business process optimization. Part of our process is to analyze and determine ROI for gaps associated with gray work. And so we've been successful working with hundreds of organizations doing just that.
Awesome. Yeah, and for those who are interested, Kevin just recently wrote a great blog post on gray work that's on our blog, so you can go check that out. And he and I were talking a few weeks back, all about gray work and how important the topic is for business leaders, and thought, what better way to kind of bring it to everyone than to host an event like this. So so excited to be with you guys today to be talking about this. So what are we going to cover? Today we're going to start with going over how work has changed, right? So what has really brought about sort of the rise of gray work, and what is gray work? Where do we see gray work showing up most often? And what are the impacts of gray work, right? Like, what is it doing for businesses? Why do we believe it is so important that businesses pay attention to this and start solving it? And then how do we eliminate it, right? So let's get to the solution. We're going to talk about what companies can do and how they need to kind of shift their thinking and their approach to eliminate gray work. And we're going to introduce you to Quickbase along the way. And then sometimes, these things can seem very big and conceptual and transformational, maybe, and that can seem hard. And it can seem like it isn't super manageable, but that isn't true. And so we're going to break it down, and Kevin's going to share some ideas and some thoughts on Quandary's approach to helping folks get started, and how you can really make this easy and manageable for yourselves. Along the way, we absolutely we'll be looking at the chat and looking for questions. Welcome you guys to ask questions as we go. We will have some slides, so bear with us as we click through those. We'll try to keep this casual and fun and interactive. So I want to make sure everyone is stretched and ready to go. And maybe we could even take some time right now just to make sure all the systems are firing and things are working. If you wouldn't mind, maybe introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from, what might be on your mind. So feel free to start using the chat, and I'm just going to check it out to see that it's working. Austin, nice. Welcome, Jen. Everyone else want to jump in there? Utah, amazing. Boston. All right, we're getting all over the place. Phillies, go Eagles. Amazing, awesome. Okay, St. Louis, I'm from St. Louis. I was born in St. Louis, amazing. All right, great, everything's working and folks are feeling ready to jump in, that's great. So let's get started. So we believe, right, and the reason that we're here, the reason Kevin and I thought this was so important, is we really believe that we are at a defining moment. And that moment is really a shift in the way that work gets done, right? And that shift is from what we call structured work to dynamic work. And so what does that mean, right? Structured work is very simple. It's linear, it's small team work. And today, our work is much more flexible. It's multidimensional. it's multi-stakeholder, and it's highly, highly complex, right? We all probably remember the way that work used to happen, and probably most of us remember it with some fondness. We'd all, small teams, we'd all get into a room together around a conference table. We were physically in the same place. We would be in the same network, using the same sets of applications, pretty standardized processes, pretty simple workflows. And you don't see that at all anymore, right? We've got, it isn't just a hybrid work issue, although certainly that's made things more complicated, but you've now got dispersed teams, not just across different locations, but entire organizations, right? So it's not just your company, but it's the companies that you have to work with, right? And that includes super kind of matrix processes, right? To kind of stitch all that work together using a whole range of tools that really don't talk to each other, right? And of course, the pace of change, the pace of adaptation that we are now required to keep up with, right? Which is everything that's been coming at us, it has exponentially grown, right? And so work used to be pretty structured, right? Like that was the world of our work was very structured, but now it's highly dynamic, and it is much, much more complex to drive productivity and to be successful as a business. And the rub, sort of the tension here, is that the tools, the software tools that are available to us today that are meant to help us get our work done, they were not built for this new way of work. They're not built for how we need and want to work today. Okay, so let's take a step back and let's talk about kind of how we got here, right? So what really has brought about this rise of what we call gray work? So if we look back over the last couple of decades, obviously technology has radically transformed kind of how we work. It's been transforming, and it's been making us much more productive, right? So you look at those first interactions, obviously the advent of the personal computer and the internet. I remember, this is gonna age me a little bit, my oldest brother, my brother Joe, when he went to college, he I think had an Apple IIc. He was like the only guy in his dorm who had a personal computer, right? I mean, that's where we came from. And now today, sitting right next to me, I've got my AirPods and my phone. This is like an appendage, right? Everything we do, it's completely transformed our lives, not just work, but our lives. And along with that, our expectations, right? We expect things to be super simple and easy and fast. I can order groceries. I can do just about anything from my phone. We expect that now in how we work as well. Over the last 10 to 15 years, everything has been about digital transformation. Digitize everything. We have so much data now at our fingertips, right? And now we kind of get into this age of intelligence with artificial intelligence everywhere. It's like a space race around AI these days, right? And there's been trillions of dollars invested, all to try to make us more productive. But here's the challenge, excuse me, right? We are stalled on productivity. In fact, earlier this year, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics put out their quarterly report and found that the productivity in the US is at the lowest level since the 1970s. So think about that, right? We just went through, my brother didn't have an Apple IIc in the 1970s, it was 1980s, but we just took you through that evolution of technology over the last 30, 40 years. And yet, with all the advancements to make us more productive, we're actually at lower levels of productivity than since the 1970s, right? And we feel that, right? Do you feel that? I mean, Kevin, you're on the front lines with companies every single day. Are you hearing from your customers and from business leaders that work is easier, or is work harder?
No, it's absolutely harder, and people are busier than ever with less productivity, which is absolutely wild to me.
Yeah, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Again, like we have more data than ever before, we have more tools than ever before, so what's happening, right? What's happening is that with all that technological innovation has come massive data and system fragmentation, right? So for us, this started to make a lot of sense and start to crystallize a lot of our thinking earlier this year. And we said, let's dig into this a little more. And so we decided to do some research, and we talked to over 1,000 business leaders. And we found that their teams collectively use 77 different apps and platforms every week to do their work. Like, it's insane, right? It's hard to learn. That's hard to share data across teams using all those different tools. It creates silos. So it's no wonder, right, that our data also found that more than half of respondents are obviously overwhelmed by the number of software solutions they need to get their work done, right? 2/3 of those respondents spend nearly 20 hours every week, half of their 40-hour work week every week, just looking for information, right, through those systems. They're all the systems they spend so much money on. They've used so many resources to implement that were supposed to be making things easier and faster. Half of the work week. I'm a manager. I lead a team that just talking about that makes me sweat, that my team is spending half of their work week in unproductive, busy work, right? And so then I think about, okay, well, how do these people work together? Well, a majority of our respondents said that those different software solutions actually prohibit them from easily sharing project-related information with other people. So they're not productive on their own, and they have trouble working with others. So they can't work with their teams or other vendors that they need to coordinate with, right? So what happens? I'm going to bring this slide back because there's more on the slide to point out, right? No, next slide. So I'm going to bring this slide back that we looked at a moment ago, because our teams are not poor performers, right? These are strong, smart workers, and they have to get their work done. So they figure it out, right? Teams live in spreadsheets and emails, or they live in collaboration tools like Team and Slack. So look at what's popping up here on the right, because they have to figure out smaller, scrappier, and more manual ways to work around the tools they're giving, because they're not actually helping them, right? So this is what we call gray work, right? Gray work is that slow, manual way that our teams get by using ad hoc solutions like spreadsheets, because the software that's given to them, what you see across the top here, you can see some of those logos, right? It doesn't actually support the way they need to work today. And that's where the real work is happening, is below the line, right? It's chasing and connecting data and pulling it into a spreadsheet so you can actually do the analysis and create reports, or it's emailing an attached Word doc to a team, only to then realize a couple days later or weeks later that another team needed that information too, but they weren't on the email, and so they don't have it. Now you've got two teams who don't have the same information, right? Or it's slacking people all day long, asking for data, asking for files because they're too hard to find in the systems that you have. And your whole organization is doing this every single day. They're stuck working below, around, and in between these big, expensive systems of record. And so at scale, right, across your whole organization, it's wildly inefficient, and it's costing companies millions, right? So the gray work is the problem that's holding back productivity today. This is why we're here. This is why we believe this is one of the biggest opportunities that business leaders have to create competitive advantage for them in the market. Solve for the gray work. Okay, I've talked a lot. We're gonna do a little interactive moment here. So tell us, use the chat. I see some of you using it, which is great. Tell us, does this idea of gray work sound familiar to you? And where do you find gray work popping up in your work or in your organizations today? I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I'll take a minute and let you guys respond. Any thoughts? Any thoughts? Anyone want to put it out there? We have more questions. So yeah, the Slacks. We have more questions. So if you don't want to jump in now, we'll come back to you. Yeah. Lots of Slacks, lots of spreadsheets. All right, we'll keep moving. Yeah, spreadsheets. All right. So some of these ideas are, again, kind of conceptual, right? These are just sort of ideas. But Kevin, again, you're on the front lines. I'd love to kind of pass it off to you and tell us, maybe where you're seeing this gray work popping up the most. Where is it? What are sort of some of the common threads here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and Molly, everything you said is exactly it. We actually pulled our team internally, and we built a lot of our applications in Quickbase ourselves, and they're customized for us and integrated with our other tools. And they estimated about 20 hours a week and gray work was being done. So I feel you on the team aspect. We do this for our customers every day and have amazing results, and we just forget about ourselves sometimes. And so it starts with us and trying to make that happen. So just to bridge that into how we see it and what I do as a company to mitigate is across all organizations and all verticals. So if you think about it from large assets, anything that's field service management, anything that's going to be out across department, across team, across country, right? Any multinational organizations, they have different processes, different tools, and different ways of doing things. That is ripe for great work. So how all that's brought together is exactly what you said. Through spreadsheets, is through multiple collaboration tools that are supposed to make things easier, but it turns out you didn't include someone in a chat, or you talked to the wrong person. And my favorite is we had a client that had 162 tabs on a spreadsheet. They spent all week, all month filling out these complex bids, and then turns out they were using the wrong version, and none of them got approved by finance. So you think about it like that, they spent tens and tens of hours per person making this happen, and it was for nothing because it wasn't approved. So all of that can be mitigated. We'll talk about that as we get through the process. But we'll just talk through some examples in the next few slides on really what is gray work, and then some examples of what we've seen with our customer base. And hopefully that relates to you, so that way everyone on the call here can go back and say, these are opportunities for us. Because it's not about solving all of the problems with one tool. It's about solving many problems with one platform, in my opinion. So the first way to really take a look at it is data across multiple systems. So the way I look at this is you've got a monolith, right? You've got an Oracle, an SAP, maybe even a NetSuite, something there. Anything that's going to be considered a productivity tool that we all know really kills time and doesn't make it happen. But the data that is available in that may not be set up for you, right? It may not help you as an organization or as a group really hone that in and make productivity happen. And so when you have multiple systems that you have to take data and parse it and then parse it, and then you end up Excel, because that's really how you need it to work in order to figure out what is 1 + 1, because for some reason they didn't buy that module, or they didn't implement that formula. That's going to really open up the opportunity for great work here. So the next slide here is one of our customers. So we can't use logos, unfortunately, but I'll let you use your deduction. And it's a great fast food chain that serves chicken every day, but 1 day of the week. And so with that is they have many complex processes to innovate. You think about a top of the line innovator in the space, they're running many tests all the time around what is going to work for a region, what's going to work for a store, what's going to work for the organization. So you've got different opinions of different people across many groups and organization, within the organization and outside. So you think about it's not that scalable. What's going to happen here in Excel, what's going to happen there in some kind of online sheets, et cetera, that's not going to translate for executive buy-in. You're not going to get the franchisees or franchisors to really understand how all that's going to work together. So essentially you get a bunch of data that lives in the ether. What was a great idea today completely got lost because someone that needed to buy into it didn't see it. So all of that you can kind of see folds too. And what is the actual outcome, right? It's an inconsistent customer experience. So if you think about it from a brand perspective, and Molly might appreciate this, is that customer experience is their brand. And so if you have inconsistent customer experience, you're failing as a company. It doesn't matter how good your food is. If you don't like what you're getting from that, because all of that built into having 2 drive-through lanes, right? Or having the ability to make the milkshake the exact same every single time, right? All of that goes in behind the scenes that you don't think about as a consumer, but we do as a provider for business process optimization, because we help that company understand where those gaps are and put it into play. So kind of went overboard on this example, but I wanted to really help you see the end-to-end process on that. The outcome of great work isn't time lost, it's customers lost. And that really translates to a negative bottom line for your company. So the next one is your dispersed and diverse teams. See this all the time in construction. We have plenty of customers in the construction and real estate spaces. So you think about field service management. What happens when you don't all work together? We used to work in the office. Now we work remote, or we work hybrid. That's not necessarily the issue here, right? It's when you've got somebody typing notes into Notepad on their iPad or their tablet. You've got someone putting it into an online Word doc because they do have cell service versus the other person who didn't, et cetera, et cetera. So those teams across the way, you lose focus on what you're supposed to be doing. Are you installing a toilet? Great, but what did you miss in order to get to that? And then what did you not translate so the customer has the best experience? Thinking about the one before. So dispersed and diverse teams have probably, if not more than the data issue, more attribution to great work. And so in the construction space, we had a client that does contractor onboarding. So to paint the picture here, they did hiring fairs, not job fairs, where they had to bring on tens of thousands of people in one weekend. So we were brought in because they have a great, awesome HRIS that took 8 minutes per person to come on board. So just do the math for a second and think about how long that's actually going to take in people minutes. And they needed that to be 30 seconds or less. So what we were able to do through Quickbase and being able to make that happen is take everything that was going into the different tools and the different people that are, because you think about it, it's like a conveyor belt, different stations for this hiring job fair, is streamlined into one central system. Instead of using an applicant tracking system here, an HRS here, payroll here, et cetera, we had all of that in one place and then integrated it into all of the systems that were needed. So we got them down to the 30 seconds that were needed. We saved them tens of thousands of hours a weekend in order to get that done. And at the end of the day, the amount of data that was consolidated was massive, and the impact to the client was less people had to be involved, which includes less errors, and less errors is better for everyone involved. And then asset management is always great, especially going back to the construction space, the real estate space, anybody who has many tools at their disposal, physical assets, digital assets, people assets, things like that. If they're not in one place, or if they are in one place, it doesn't really matter, but all of that data gets lost. All of those processes that interact with it gets lost. And ultimately, I don't even have to give you a case study, but you can imagine the millions of dollars that companies literally lose, because the asset was supposed to be in warehouse A. It's not in warehouse A, it's actually in warehouse Z. It walks off and they have to replace a $100,000 server, whatever it is, right? That happens every day, all across the board. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll just briefly talk a little bit about inventory management. But the asset side here is bringing inventory in and getting inventory out. So they were using a field mobile app that was on a tablet that was proprietary, not directly related to their core system. So they had to build some middleware and then putting the data into a data warehouse and massaging it, et cetera. So if we've been following along on all the examples that Molly's been giving, and here you can just already see, I don't even have to give you the entirety of what is going to happen, right? It gets lost, inventory gets miscounted, it's all manual. Next thing you know, you're following out, you're ordering more, you don't have enough, you run out of stock, and then at the end of the day, you're unable to fulfill. And if you can't fulfill, your customers aren't happy. KPIs go down, and NPS goes down, and then you have to start from scratch. So couple high-level examples on how gray work has happened in real life, how it's been mitigated, and then we'll talk about a little bit later about how it was mitigated and what the outcomes were. This is me. Oh, and the last one here, highly customized business process, which is amazing because that's exactly what we do every day. Is those business processes that are bringing everything together, right? You think about if this, then that, one department, two department, three department, as everything goes together, it's not any different. I like the assembly line aspect or the concept because it puts it visually, you can't put paint on the car without having the doors on, or you can't put you have to have the engine in before you get it down to the final line, et cetera. And so a lot of what we do, just a shameless plug here, is to understand the entirety from day one, right? Sitting down and understanding what your current state is, where you're at, where your gaps are, which ultimately uncovers the gray work, because that's where hiring a consulting agency has an ROI. Nobody likes anybody to come in and say, hey, you're not doing your job as well as you could. But if we can say, you could be doing this instead, which allows you to open up all this time to innovate, therefore it drives your company up or down, either top line up or bottom expenses down, it ultimately sits well and it helps you do it. So as you bring it all together, the processes are the last piece that we've seen really gray work pop its head. And so this is messy. and yet it is very simplified. So to take it even deeper into a real life example, it's a commercial banking real estate. They called it reimagining. I think the idea here is it's a fancy name for saying digital transformation. I'm just going to point out a couple of the logos you probably can see if you look through all the noise is Oracle and SAP. They had both of them. It's really not unheard of in the grand scheme of things, which means it's extra complex because you've got owners that don't like sharing data out of either of them. Then you got some proprietary tools like Yardi, there's a JLL tool, and then you got other proprietary homegrown pieces. And finally, we have all of the gray works plopped in the middle with SharePoint, all kinds of old, outdated Excel files, etc. And so what I really want to do here, and what I think the understanding is, if you were to blow up all of your processes into a map, and I did this for one of our customers, and it was one department, it was multinational, so it's pretty complex, but one department, we had a conference room, I want to say it was probably 25 by 40. We had the entire room swim laned around in circles twice because of the different processes and the different tools and the different interactions and everything else. So you can just think about how condensed this actually is, and how it really starts to, you see where small changes have massive exponential impact, both if you don't do anything about it negatively, and if you do something about it in a positive manner.
I love it. Yeah, amazing, amazing examples. Thanks for walking us through that, Kevin. All right, we're gonna take a breath because we've been talking a lot, and before we move on to solutions, we're gonna just take a minute. We're gonna test your knowledge. Have you all been paying attention? So we've got 3 things here. We're gonna start with using the chat. So test your knowledge in your own words. How would you tell your neighbor what gray work is? How would you tell your coworker what gray work is? How would you define it? Give folks a few seconds here, 30 seconds. Yeah. Yeah, repetitive work, absolutely. Chasing data, non-value add work, absolutely. Yep, just finding the data. Yeah, I love it. Manual ad hoc tasks just to get by, absolutely. Awesome, okay. Great job, guys. All right, 2 more. Okay, which of the following statements about gray work is not true? So gray work negatively impacts revenue, productivity, and employee satisfaction. Manually aggregating and analyzing data across multiple platforms is an example of gray work. There are hundreds of well-established technology tools specifically designed to address gray work. And gray work is a product of tech tool sprawls. Which one is not true? And you can just click on the answer directly. You don't have to use the chat for this. Give folks a few seconds and then we'll flip to the results. Maybe 10 more seconds. All right, let's flip. Okay. Yeah, so which one is not true? There are hundreds of well-established tech tools specifically designed to address gray work. That one is not true. You know, if anything, all of the tech tools, again, they often serve great purposes for very specific things, but taken together, if anything, they're actually contributing to the problem, right? Because they don't work well with other tools. They don't think sort of holistically about how work needs to happen today. So they force teams to go to spreadsheets and go to Word docs and email and all of those other things. Okay, 1 more. You guys are doing great. All right, we see gray work in all industries, but especially those that have data in multiple systems, that are capital intensive, that have dispersed teams, including field workers, physical and digital assets to manage, or all of the above. Give you guys a few seconds. Okay, they're starting to come in. Okay, let's see how everyone did. Nice. All right. I'm going to give it a 91%. We'll round up. Good job, everyone. So, as Kevin was just describing, gray work, it really impacts all industries. I think, everyone, all workers encounter this to some degree, but certainly these four things combined really sort of exacerbate the problem. We see those in industries like construction, in real estate, oil and gas, big, capital improvement projects, healthcare, we see it, manufacturing. Those are really, really common industries that we see kind of those four things combined and sort of gray work everywhere. All right. So let's get going. Okay, so now what, right? We just talked all about the problem. We talked about kind of where it shows up, how we define it. But what are you all supposed to do about it, right? As we've said, the tools that we have really weren't built for this, right? You can't make them work. Companies have been trying and trying, and here we are, right? So you need a tool that is purpose-built for gray work, right? A system that brings all your people, your processes, and your data together in one place. A system that lets you see, connect, and control your most complex work. And so we call this dynamic work management. Okay, it exists and we exist because there's really a set of required capabilities that are missing for most technology stacks, or they're there, but they're handled sort of parts of it are handled in different siloed systems, right? And so we've seen time and time again that these 5 things are really required to live together to effectively deal with gray work. So let's play this out, right? So you have a whole bunch of existing data, many different tech systems. We've talked a lot about that today. And so the first thing you have to do is you have to bring all that data together to do anything, right? And so from there, you can really do any of these 5 things, but it's often kind of along this life cycle, right? So you're going to run strategic projects, your most complex, your most important projects. But this isn't really just task management, right? It's actually doing the work. So that includes managing, tracking, and allocating resources, managing people, scheduling where your trucks need to be, or monitoring equipment that needs to be maintained, and on and on. And then it's orchestrating that work. So it's getting it done, right? So as Kevin has said, you've got multiple teams, you've got multiple companies coming together. He talked about working with a multinational. It's just, there's so many different people that have to get coordinated and work that has to get coordinated across companies, locations, and systems. So you need to customize and automate complex workflows so that those teams all can work and move seamlessly together. But then you also have to make sure it's compliant. You have field workers, right? You have to make sure your teams are safe at all times and compliant with whatever the requirements are, whether those are internal quality standards or regulatory agencies that are requiring you to act a certain way or to train teams a certain way or whatever it is, right? And then you need to make sure that you're actually delivering your products and services to your customers. So whether that's delivering a store to a market or an MRI machine to a hospital, you have to then manage that end customer experience. Right? Those aren't separate things. Those all have to happen seamlessly as one whole, right? And so across all of that, you need a way to see how that works together, because these things don't function in silos. Silos are, in fact, the problem that we're trying to solve, right? So you're bringing all that fragmented data in, you're using it to manage end to end across these use cases in one centralized place, and then you're able to look across it all so you get full control over every detail of that work. So you can see, connect, and control your most complex work, right?
Awesome, Molly, love it. The dynamic work management is ultimately why we exist. And I have to thank Quickbase and the ecosystem that we are that put a name to it. A lot of times people are lost into what it is that we're solving for all across the board, right? We're building applications to do this, and we're building a bridge between that, integrations for this. But ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to make the organizations we work with more efficient, more productive, and ultimately innovate. If they're innovating, they're driving forward. So you'll hear me kind of harp on that because that's what I believe, and that's how we see the most results. So back to our examples. So that premium fast food company. So what we were able to do is bring all of the data into one place, have more collaboration in real time, rather than having disparate systems and email chains and meetings here and then chats there. having it centralized. So the data brought into what we built in is almost a data warehouse in order to have real-time reporting and all of the ins and outs of prototyping in one spot. With that real-time data, we were able to help them visualize and understand how much they needed to purchase of an individual item at one time, whether it was for the prototype phase or for the rollout phase. And so you can think of a magnitude like that, what that has on an impact from a cost perspective. So helping, not going to give us too much credit there on the procurement side. They have an amazing process, but just giving the data and the information needed to help not overbuy or underbuy. And then tied to ultimately this one group solved a problem and now it's sprawling. That's the beauty of eliminating gray work, is that you have other people that need to have this as well. And so what we've helped them with is internalizing the rollout and implementation plans on how we can ultimately identify more gray work areas and then what that looks like in the future 24, 25 implementations. And then bottom line, right? We already talked about customer experience. Customer experience is number one. It's a really loose number, but what you can tell is how much money they're making, right? Are they getting more people in? Are the lines longer during off-peak hours, et cetera? All that's real data that goes into helping determine if these prototypes are effective. And if they're effective, then they roll out across the country. And if they're not, they get scrapped, right? And so we're giving them the visibility they need in order to determine, is this revenue based on a boost in promotion or a boost in efficiencies? The other one, the onboarding example, it reduced onboarding time by 82%. I already told you 8 minutes to 30 seconds. That doesn't seem that insignificant when you're talking just Molly and I have a conversation as 10 minutes go by, we really didn't even notice it. But when you have 10,000 people you need to onboard, that is massive. So 82% is a lot of a bigger number to wrap your head around and comprehend. So you have better communication, which reduce your defection rate. So people, if you are thinking about it, you're offering your services to this company, whether it's on a one-time basis or a recurring basis, you don't want to have a bad experience during onboarding. If you have a bad experience during onboarding, you probably don't want to work there. So the longer it takes and the more cumbersome and the more people you have to repeat your answers to, you walk out of line. You're like, I'm not going to waste 8 minutes of my day to get involved with this organization because they may not pay me on time because, right? We all know how the spiral goes. And so that was, seeing another customer experience number go up was pretty amazing. Being able to actually forecast. We all know if you deal with a team or if you deal with implementations or if you deal with anything that has to deal with dates, forecasts are huge and they're always wrong. So being able to forecast it more accurately is massive, to being able to say this site needed 8,000, this site needed 9,000, this site needed 7,500, et cetera. So being able to tie all that together. And then the throughput of number of hires, right? You push them through. We already talked about that. It's just a better experience for everybody. And then with inventory management, so just basic soft metrics, you have a better experience, you have better job satisfaction, lower turnover. Lower turnover is cost, it's time, it's things that, when you're dealing with a large number of employees, it really has an impact on your bottom line because you're not having to replace people because they just didn't feel like coming to work today. And then as you're having a platform that is familiar enough, you basically can keep that look and feel and make continued improvements. So you're not having to retrain every 6 months on a new platform. You're not having to go chase down that data and put it all in one place. And then data entry, everybody knows is the bane of almost everyone's existence. And so being able to cut it in half, these guys had a 10x ROI. So pretty large impact to the organization by just eliminating some gray work, by centralizing data, by having everyone know where to go and having some good training around it. And then just a few more examples, and Molly, feel free to hop in if you want to add any color to these, but some pretty good logos, all enterprise level customers, and essentially being able to help them with reducing gray work has had some pretty large positive impacts. So Albertsons, just for example, saved over $1 billion managing the real estate portfolio on Quickbase. You think about the number of stores, you think about the number of inventory, the employees, the vendors, everything else that goes into that. We've already given a million examples on how that can be done. Just putting an actual number to it is significant for a company that has revenues well over $1 billion, but saving $1 billion is massive to anybody. Valvoline, both oil change spots, 240 locations, not insignificant as well. So you think about it, these are powers of magnitude. When you make a small change across a large footprint, that's really where your numbers are going to be impressive. So centralizing that data, having everything in one spot, having everybody understanding where to go. And I can't harp on training enough. Just because you have a great tool, if they don't know how to use it, it will always result back in gray work. And so it's part of our process of a continuous improvement is to reiterate, this is where you go, this is why you go there, and this is how you do it. We're open to feedback because the platforms are available for us to change, but train, retrain, and making sure everyone has continuing education around your tools is huge. Asset management, billion devices. I mean, I don't even need to go into detail there. That just gives me a headache thinking about trying to manage that. So all of that in one spot, not having the Southeast region. Have you ever dealt with Comcast? You know, they've regionalized all their offices, right? And so having all of that in one place, so technology and information executives can know exactly where they're at, sunsetting cycles, et cetera. So just kind of the magnitude there. Consigli from a construction management, awesome customer. They've got, years and years and years of Quickbase innovation. Actually, I believe they spoke in many empowers. Ultimately, they're an innovator is the way I look at it. So having all their processes streamlined and removing the gray work, it just makes them operate higher all around. And finally, we've got Walgreens. We've seen them on almost every corner. They've got tons of stores. They build and manage and remodel and inventory and it goes on forever. And so being able to have all of that and understanding how much it's going to take from a cost and time perspective to renovate a store, having all of that, and then all of the pieces that go in, let's say a date slips. How are you communicating with all of your vendors? How are you communicating with your subs? How are you communicating with your executives? So all of that is centralized, all of that's managed, and all of that is in real-time reporting, so that way no one's surprised, and you're ultimately saving. I can actually test this, over $1 billion in savings for them, and just being able to have visuals into their project management for new store and rebuilds.
Yeah, awesome. Like, what amazing case studies. We always, we like to show these big logos and these big numbers because the results are there. And it's important that, folks can take these back. I think Andrew posted in the chat that, that business impact quantification is really important as you all are thinking about, how to bring this back to your businesses and prove the value of this to your teams and your leaders. But it also just shows scale, right? It shows that, whether it's now or, as your companies continue to grow, there's just so much that you can do on a platform like Quickbase, so that you can, start where you are now and just continue to grow and scale over time. And really, the sky's the limit. Now, when you do look at these, again, we've talked about big concept. We're looking at some, really big brands, big names, and big numbers up here. But sometimes this can feel a little bit overwhelming. It can feel like, okay, great, but that's not me. My company is, much smaller than this, or this just feels too heavy, too hard for me to go and implement. But it really doesn't have to be. And so we wanted to make sure that we sort of close this. We sort of left you guys with some thoughts on how to get started, how to make this manageable. And so, Kevin, I'm going to ask you to keep going, if you will, and share with us your thoughts, how Quandary does it, and what you might tell these folks in terms of how to get going.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just thinking about it as a whole, whenever we're working with a new customer, we really tend to understand the level of complexity that exists today. So current state assessment and really getting into it first, kind of vertical there. And then how they currently are solving the problems. So if you think about it, the complexity of constructing a building is going to be different than the complexity of working in a 3-person team on a fundraising project. But the starting point is the same. No matter you're trying to get a small department to deliver something on budget and on time, or managing a massive mega project that nearly always runs into delays and overblown budgets. So the way we start out is just looking at it. How are you doing work today? Where are the gaps? Where is the gray work? Where are your applications that need to be sunset? Where are the ones that need to be invested in? So what can you do? Questions you ask yourself is, what can I do to make my team's work easier? So thinking about it from a bottleneck perspective, inefficiencies, any places that may be an obvious Band-Aid that was put in as a temporary stopgap, I don't know, 2 years ago, and it's still there. And that actually ends up making it harder long-term because it doesn't scale. So as long as you have a clear understanding of how the work's currently being done, it'll help you determine where the improvements can be made. And so after you assess it, then you're going to define your clear objectives. So you set those measurable and specific SMART goals, if you will, objectives for the change that you want to make. You identify the biggest pain points and link to the outcomes that you want to drive, whether it's improving productivity, you're going to reduce your cycle time, you're going to increase your customer satisfaction to make sure they have the best experience ever, or you're going to enhance your overall agility as a company. Can you move quickly? Can you be more nimble? Can you react to the market, et cetera? Having those clear objectives are going to help you stay focused and then therefore make the decisions you need to move it forward. And then probably one of the biggest challenges with any project, right? You're talking about change management, cultural shift, leadership buy-in. What I've found is, being on a leadership team and working with leadership teams every day is that we're not as scary as we seem. If you think about it that way, is that if you're bringing ideas and innovation that helps make the company operate faster, less expensive, find money, et cetera, the buy-in comes naturally. So just throwing an idea over the fence the worst thing you can do is bring a problem without a solution, right? The beautiful thing about everything we're talking about is that you can identify the gaps, but you can also provide that solution, right? Understanding the gap in data is I have to send the spreadsheet to 15 different people and it takes me 6 weeks to get it back. Boom, you have the problem there. And then you also have the solution. Well, I can bring this into a centralized platform in real time. We can have a workflow set up, and when this happens and this person's notified automatically, et cetera, you can take that 6-week, rodeo, if you will, down to a couple weeks. So just getting everybody bought in by the way of success is going to be huge. So ultimately, it's taking a look at really where you're at, where do you want to go, and then how do we get there is going to be the way to eliminate gray work ultimately.
Yeah, I love it. I might pile on and actually give an example just because it came up this morning. To think about getting started, and Kevin sort of hit on this, is sort of one use case, one team. So I was hearing something this morning from Phil Moran, who's the CIO of DF Prey General Contracting. It's contractors in Massachusetts. And he was talking about the first project that he did with Quickbase. They had a spreadsheet, right? Going back to spreadsheets, that they used to track their bonds. So they used to track the value, the premiums when the bonds matured, and they would send it around via email to folks throughout the company to make sure it was updated. And there was always sort of doubts about the accuracy and was it a current and who had the latest information. And it was something easy that they could build an application around. So in 2.5 hours, right, Phil himself went in and built an application, and that eliminated that spreadsheet. It makes sure all their bonds are in a single place. Everyone at any time can log in and see it. It's always, they always have confidence that it's accurate and up to date. And it was that simple, 2.5 hours. And so they saw the immediate value of that. And now they've moved on and they've done obviously much more complex things around estimating and bidding and, asset tracking and all of those things. But they started small, they proved that value, and then they expanded from there. So that's what we have for you all today. I hope this is helpful. I hope, we've sort of taken you through a lot, shared a lot of examples. We still have some time. I think we have about 10 minutes. So we want to open it up to questions. Instead of using the chat, there is a Q&A section, I believe. So please use that Q&A section, and we'll wait and see if there are any questions. Awesome. Okay. Okay, we'll give it 2 minutes for folks to put their questions in. Okay, first question. Kevin, I'm going to flip this to you. What are some common KPIs I should be tracking or results I should be expecting, especially starting out?
Ooh, you're going with the hardballs right off the bat. So KPIs are going to be specific for every organization. And one thing you do during the assessment phase is determine that. Ultimately, one that will be recurring is how many touch points do you have, how many systems are involved, and how many people are interacted with. So if you think about that, then you can extrapolate how long processes are taking, how much effort goes into collecting the data, and then you can come up with your gray work baseline, if you will. Once you have those understood, then you can create your future state KPIs tied to, if this took us 62 man hours to complete this process, or people hours, I think, a better way to put it, and we're down 10, what is that from a dollar perspective? You can extrapolate people's salaries and come up with an actual firm number there, but that's not really the number you care about. The number you care about is the innovation dollars, the growth dollars, what are you actually driving towards? And that gives you an enterprise value of your investment there. So you can have your hard value, your actual cost to do the work, and then you can have the impact to the organization. And that's really how you can determine if this is a worthwhile effort.
Awesome. Okay. Ooh, we have another question, and I'll take this one. How is Quickbase tackling gray work? So I think that means how are we tackling gray work within our own organization, because we're not immune to this, right? We talked about the industries where gray work is most common, but really gray work happens everywhere, and we are certainly no exception. So I would give maybe two pretty immediate answers to things that have come up just in the last probably 48 hours. So the first is one, I work on the brand team, so I live in sort of the marketing space. And we currently have no central solution to track forecasting, pipeline, and team capacity all in one place, right? There's different tools that we use, and we do use actually a spreadsheet for one of them. And so we are actively right now in the process of combining that into a single application so that we can track forecasts, our actuals, pipeline, how we're doing from a pipeline and sales perspective, and then team capacity and sort of the work that we're doing that actually supports those. We can track that all together in one centralized place. So that would be sort of one example that's closest to my world. Another example is Quickbase, our Boston, so we're headquartered in Boston. We are moving offices, and so the new office won't be ready for a few months. So we're gonna have a temporary office space. And so in order for that to work, we're using a co-working space. We needed a solution that employees could request a badge to go work in that new space. That required some internal work within facilities here at Quickbase. And then we needed a way to actually integrate seamlessly with the co-working space so that they had all the information and they could sort of generate the badges. And you're talking about, dozens, hundreds, potentially hundreds of employees coming through. And so within a couple hours, the internal team was able to spin up a Quickbase app that allows that to be sort of automated. So employee makes the request, it immediately sets off various work streams internally for our facilities team. And then once they're completed with their work, it fires off what needs to be sent to the co-working place. And so then that process is closed. And again, it took us a couple hours to do that. So those are two very, very immediate answers, but we look every single day for ways that we can use Quickbase to eliminate some of these sort of unproductive, sort of busy work and the manual work that shouldn't slow us down. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, from an attendee, are you able to demonstrate a database and how you identified the solutions presented? Kevin, I'm guessing that is the solutions that you presented.
For me?
I think so. Are you able to demonstrate the database and how you identified the solutions presented?
Let's see. It's like too many apps to do the job. Yeah, so in the webinar, we're not able to demo, unfortunately, but we can talk through a little bit about it. But absolutely happy to follow up. Molly can set up some time and we can go through exactly how that was. But the concept, the way I look at it is that the database and the build is the semi-final step to solving the problem, if you will. Is all of the work goes in the front end to understanding, kind of like I mentioned earlier, of assessing, right? If you have many applications, why? First question. My favorite question to ask any customer, client, prospect, attendee, anything is why? Why are you doing this? Why is it that way? Why was it that way? Why isn't it working? All of that will help you get down the rabbit hole of understanding where are your process gaps. Once you identify your process gaps, then you can identify which applications in your stack are relevant, which applications can stay, can go, and then where it needs to be filled in. And then because of the nature of Quickbase and Molly's perfect example of a 2 hours later application was built, you don't need to build an application on the front end. There's no value in building it and then rebuilding it and rebuilding it and rebuilding it unless you want to flex your muscle on how well you build your applications. Build it once. Right? My favorite saying is do it right or do it twice. Get all the data you need, understand the process that are needed, and then build the application. Then you can really wow everybody on how quickly you modify it. So something to just kind of think about from a process standpoint.
Love it. All right. We have 4 minutes left. Maybe time for one more question. Let's see if anything else has come in. How do you first know you had a problem that needed to be solved with technology versus something else?
I'll go first, Molly. You can feel free to give your examples of kind of your work history. And this is going to be a farce, so don't burn me at the stake here. Is I hate solving problems with technology personally. Ironically, we're a technology solutions provider. But the value, as if you can't tell, of what we do is people and changing the way people do work, because that has much more of an impact over the trendiest technology or the integrations that are built today or what's working for you today. Processes, refining your processes, ROI is going to have infinitely better results than plopping in a technology solution that ultimately just gives you a stopgap. If you have to change your processes to use a tool, then how effective is that tool really, right? So like I mentioned in the last question is use the technology as the last piece to get it to where you need to get it how you need to understand it and then to visualize it. But understanding that whole end-to-end from a process perspective is really how you solve your problems within an organization.
Yeah, great answer. Okay, we're gonna end on that. We have one more slide for you all. Thank you all for joining. We've had a great time. Thanks for the questions and the comments. We do want to leave you with where to go next. So if you want to learn more, I talked about the blog at the top of the webinar, but please check out the blog. There's a ton of content around productivity and gray work and how to think about dynamic work management. You could always visit our website. Again, tons of information there. Great ebook on gray work that you can go download for yourself. And then I would leave you with an invitation to join our next webinar. We do these webinars at least once a month, so please always check back in our events section of our website for the next upcoming webinar. The next one is all about productivity and using AI, which is everyone's favorite topic these days. So please join us in October for that webinar. And thanks so much. We're going to leave this up. You guys can all capture the QR code. Sorry, Kevin.
No, I was just thanking everyone for being here. Molly, it's been amazing seeing you again and working through this with you.
Yeah, it's been great, Kevin. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day.